All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today we're going to talk about how to build community resilience. No, real, like for real, not theoretically, but how we do that. So sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverage. Let's get at her. All right, welcome back to Inside My Canoe Head. Thanks again for all of you who are new and joining us here. And for those that don't know, over at www.insidemycanoehead.ca, we've got a website, talks about us, where we're from, how to support us. All the information is there. Drop over, have a look. I don't tag you. I don't know you're there, and I'm not capturing your information. That's not what we're about here. And Inside My Canoe Head is a podcast that is run by Preparedness Labs Incorporated, its parent company. I am your host, Dr. D. Our mission here today and every day is to help build individual preparedness so that you can rock an incredible life and chase your dreams. This is season 11. We have over 290 episodes. We're approaching number 300. We're downloaded in well over 55 countries around the world and in some 900 plus individual locations. This is free, always will be free. It's a community, it's a practice, it's our offering to help you navigate these crazy 2020s. And 2020s are going to be a bit more spicy. I've said this at many times before, and for very good and well understood reasons. This decade is going to be very disruptive as the world reorganizes. And as we sit here in the middle of a whole bunch of calamities, how does that and what does that mean for you? That's where the theory of community resilience comes from. Resilience on its own really is a 21st century flourishing idea in the community of practice within the field of emergency management. The academic research into it has been ongoing for about 20 years. And what we're trying to do, and I'm speaking as my academic hat right now, I am a associate faculty, university professor, and the editor of a journal called the Journal of Preparedness in Canada, which is available free of charge on the website preparednesslabs.ca. And through that work in academia, what we're trying to do is understand what are the capability, conditions, variables, and things that allow certain communities to exit or navigate through and exit disasters better. And if you think about, if you take a large swath, say take the city of Toronto, Ontario, and imagine a calamity hit everybody in Toronto. Everybody was hit with the same set of variables and the same set of exposure to events. But some communities come out better. They navigate with less hurt and harm caused, and they bounce back better, which means they're up and running to their pre-event state of normalcy at a rate exceeding the rest of the population. Why? That's what community resilience academia searches to find out what is occurring or present in these communities that is not in other communities, so that we can identify what contributes to this better form of resilience, and then we can turn around and figure out how to replicate that across the rest of society. So that's what we do in academic terms. Now, when we put our hats on practical terms, the goal there is to what is the 14-step process in the Rose Hill neighborhood or the Bridle Path neighborhood or the Beaches neighborhood, whatever neighborhood you want. What is the exact 14-stage process that we have to put into place to realize a better outcome? That's the practical application, and what we refer to it is the operationalization of academic theory. This matters because what we're doing is we're looking at the academic side, we're finding relationships between variables, right? When A happens, so does B. Or when B happens, C doesn't happen. You see a positive or negative correlation. That's just an academic term for relationship. Right? So when something happens, is it positively or negatively correlated to something else? So, when A goes up, B goes down. Every time A goes up, B goes down. Now we can find a strong correlation between them. And if A is something we want or B is something we want, we can understand that relationship. A bit of a gobbledygook. But the challenge that we have in today's world is that we don't have a practical application for that. We don't do a very good job of saying, okay, we understand the correlation between items A and B, but we don't actually tell people how to build B. Right? If B is what we're after, if we want more of B across the whole population, we don't actually say, here are the 14 steps that you need to do in order. That's not what academia does. And it's not a failure of academia. It's not designed to do that. Academia looks at the relationships between the variables, develops correlation and evidence, and then asks people to go out, test it again to see if it's true. And then if it is true, let's look more deeply into this, right? So science is an ongoing investigative process, and everything that we know to be true in science is true as of right now until we prove otherwise, right? And I hate to use the saying, but real scientists, actual scientists are consistently trying to prove the data wrong, right? Because that's how we confirm something. We don't make sure it's right. We try to prove it wrong. And if it consistently comes out with the same answer, we start to add it to a paradigm. Now, every field has a paradigm. And this is the last thing I'll talk on the academic nerd stuff for you today. Every field has a paradigm. So inside of a paradigm is going to be the norms, processes, procedures, activities that are all accepted. So everybody, for example, in the field of physics accepts Newton's law, right? That's part of it. It's same as chemistry. The formula used to balance a chemical equation is part of the paradigm of chemistry. You will learn it every time. If you were to go to a first-year university chemistry class anywhere in the world, you will learn the very same things, just in a different language. That's a paradigm, right? So within the field of emergency management, there is a paradigm emerging, but inside of each one of these paradigms across every discipline is a set of definitions, right? Now, this gets more difficult in the social sciences, because remember, science is broken into natural science and social science. Natural science is obviously the physical world around us, dominated by physics, chemistry, geology, those type of sciences. Social sciences is orientated in understanding human behavior, for lack of a better term, right? Everything from sociology, anthropology, psychology, emergency management, even economics. We're trying to, and political science, everybody's trying to figure out why humans do what they do and try to create a predictive environment to where we understand this is what's likely to happen. Which, if you watch politics right now, it's pretty hard to figure that there's any commonality whatsoever across any of that. That being said, when we look at resilience, right, which we generally say here at Inside My Canoe Head, generally speaking, it is the overall concept of a capability and capacity to navigate through and emerge from an exogenous shock, leveraging only the internal definition. Simply put, what can we designate as a tribe to make it through our risk profile without needing external assistance? Now, I refer to tribe because human history is tribal by nature, right? We are not a singular solitary animal, unlike things like bears, for example. Bears come together to mate, and then that's it. The mother takes off and raises the young, and the dad takes off into the woods, kind of like something that happens in modern society. But we as humans, as a species, are tribal by nature, right? So we survive because we have a community group. Now, tribe is a traditional phraseology. Modern science uses the phrase of community, but they're interrelated. And so when we look at the community, most anthropological ideas say that the maximum size of a human community is probably about 150. Now, it's been known as the N number or some other phrases like that, but it generally means at about that size, a human community has everything it needs to self-sustain, right? It has all the different skill sets, all the different capabilities, all the different knowledge, wisdom, strengths, and ideas necessary to be reasonably successful in the environment for which it exists, right? So we don't do well as individuals. This is why in the world of preparedness, you hear a lot about people who are going to be lone wolves, and the evidence demonstrates that a lone wolf dies and the pack lives. So even in preparedness, we always talk about the fact that you are far better being a member of a community of like-minded people that are interested in preparedness than you are trying to execute the task of adopting a prepared life individually and on your own. Individual resilience begins with individual actions, but true resilience is a function of the community in which you're involved. So if you're not connected to your community, you're leaving a large part of your personal resilience on the table. And this is part of what we talk about in our research. We've done over a decade, just the people involved in the research here at the firm, well over a decade of research on this field specifically. So we've endeavored to try to challenge the paradigm and to develop the operationalization of those theoretical concepts, right? So what we're trying to do is figure out what exact steps are necessary to build a resilient community. What exactly do we need to do so that we can put it on a podcast, publish it in an article, and we can give it to a guide so that leadership within a community, now whether that be your faith community, your neighborhood association, your local street group, your friend group, whatever it may be, can leverage those to go forward, right? So when we think about resilience is built through those, we codified it as, we argue that community resilience is a byproduct of a number of increased capabilities and capacities. For example, by increasing the preparedness of a community, you increase resilience. By expanding and deepening social capital in a community, you increase resilience. By strengthening the cross-sphere coordination and cooperation, you increase resilience. And cross-sphere, I mean, society is generally made up of 4 spheres. One is civil, that is you, private sector corporations, public sector governments and agencies, and not-for-profit and NGOs, community organizations, United Way, Salvation Army. All of those 4 spheres are necessary to some degree within each community, and when you have an increased level of cooperation and coordination between those, you get better resilience. Because remember, resilience is about your ability to successfully navigate an exogenous shock, an event that occurs beyond your control with your internal resources, right? Resilience doesn't mean you're not calling the government for help. It means that you have the capability and capacity of navigating within your resources. And if one of those resources is a fully functioning and operative first response system, then that's part of your community resilience, right? This is not an idea of all the community members in a neighborhood sitting off to the side and being able to run their own tribe and never needing government again. That's not the ideological framework we're using. We're using it to leverage, to tell you that if you want to build personal success, let's be blunt here. If you want to build personal success in life, you will do so by building a community of practice. You will be far more likely to be successful at a far faster rate if you build community resilience versus just building personal resilience. Now, if you've gone through any of our free handouts that we have at preparednesslabs.ca, if you've bought some of the books that we've written or that I've written, and then if you've taken our video course our video course, Adopt a Prepared Life, that's available at preparednesslabs.ca, we talk about the steps, specific step-by-step that you need to take to become prepared, to adopt a prepared life. Then the necessary steps are you then stepping out and being the catalyst and champion within your community of practice, be it your faith community, your cultural community, your physical neighborhood location community, wherever you want to take this, to be the champion to then start building that community network, right? Because you are going to be more resilient by increasing your family preparedness, but you do that exponentially when you then grow it with your social capital. And your social capital is your connectedness to other people, the trusted norms of reciprocity and those trusted relationships. And the power of social capital, it is one of the variables that research in academia has shown is correlated to better post-event outcomes. So communities that have a stronger sense of internal relationship, a stronger tie to their community, will come out of disasters better. It's just the data shows it, right? So we want you to build social capital. We want strong, robust communities. Now, whether that's based, again, in your faith community, whether that's based in your cultural community, whether your geolocational neighborhood community, it's all about having a strong set of networks, because the theory behind social capital states that it is the glue and lubricant that keeps society together. And what that means is that your trusted network. So if you sit back and think about all of your trusted relationships that you have, and you think about the fact that you'll call these people and you'll have access to their resources. It's the network analysis framework for that. And some of Coleman and Lynn and some of the great theoretical thinkers in social capital have looked at the embedded resources within networks. But if you think about it, financial capital, which we're familiar with, human capital, which is really education, knowledge, and skills, and physical capital, which is all the goods sitting in your house, move at a greater and more frequent, at a more frequent and less disruptive pace across networks that have trust. If you've never met me before and I show up at your door and ask to borrow your lawnmower, you're probably going to tell me to pound salt. But if your neighbor from 2 doors down, the wonderful lady you know very well by a first name basis, comes by to borrow your lawnmower because hers won't start, you're probably going to loan her the lawnmower, right? That's social capital. That's building a trusted, knowing relationship with somebody else who you believe has a norm of reciprocity, and you have a really high degree of belief that you're going to get your lawnmower back in the same condition that you gave it to her. And not me. I don't present that to you at the door if you've never met me. And that's just a very simplistic look at what a trusted relationship is. It allows the flow of other capitals to occur. Now, when you build a bigger network, you see that the resources embedded in that expanded social network are available to everybody. So if you think in times of disaster and emergencies, if you had a trusted neighborhood network in a physical sense very close to your house, would everybody need a generator or would one person? Would everybody need a chainsaw or would one person, right? You start to see the advantages of not every home has to or should stockpile a bunch of kit and equipment when collectively it's far less financially disruptive for the population. But generally speaking, that's community resilience, right? Your ability and how you define community, relying on other people in your community, is that exponential leverage that you can use in times of disaster, right? And so we work at that operationalization of developing, I call it the 14-step plan, right? There's actually 15 or 16 if you include the preliminary stuff. But that's what we publish to local municipal governments, right? Here's the exacting 14-step process that you have to take. Here are the physical people that you need to contact. Here is the physical next steps you have to do. Here's the words you have to say to them when you call them. Like, we are working on this very specific project to provide the very specific set of steps that's based on evidence, not belief and opinion. Because remember, this is the brilliance of science. We could care less about what you believe, and we could care less about your opinion. We only care what the evidence tells us works, right? And that's the brilliance. That's why most scientists will just say, you can have your opinion because it matters not. Your opinion is irrelevant to science. And people don't like hearing that. They get dissuaded. They get upset. They're like, I'm entitled to. Yeah, you're entitled to your opinion. It matters nothing in reality. What matters is the evidence upon which you build that opinion. And frankly, a lot of opinions that are out there in today's world are not built on evidence. They're built on belief. And when you create an opinion based upon belief and you don't ground it in evidence that you can demonstrate to be true, we get the discourse we have in today's politics and world. But that's just a function, again, of the disruptive 2020s. I've spoken about this at length on podcasts before. There's a very, very good reasons why the 2020s are as disruptive as they are. It was very much predictive. We knew this was coming. Maybe not the pandemic, maybe not the war in Ukraine, though most saw that coming at least 10 years ago. But we knew this decade would be this disruptive. People are trying to navigate it, trying to simply live their lives, raise their families, and hope that their children have better opportunities than they did, or at least similar opportunities that they did. And so this is what adopting a prepared life is about, and what building community resilience does. It provides you that insulation and protection against these series of continuous exogenous shocks. Now, I'm on the record saying I think the disruption will go to 2032. I'm basing that on some evidence from prior history. We'll see if I'm correct. It's a bit of a long shot, I'll be honest with you, but everybody has to nail something down in science. So I have the evidence that leads me to believe that this will be disruptive till 2032. Others have different conclusions, but the point is you're in for at least another 7 years, in my mind, of some pretty rocky experiences. So why not adopt a prepared life and build community resilience, right? Because that network of people is who you rely upon. Right? Now, I will preface all the coming comments that I'm about to say that I have every manner of respect for incident response folks. Those are people belonging in police, fire, and EMS that do come to our rescue under normal circumstances. If you understand how they're funded and how they're structured, incident response within a geographical location is based upon a normative expectation of what frequency and severity of events will occur. In other words, I live in the city of Ottawa, slightly over 1 million people. There's 6,500 kilometers of roads. This is a massive geographic city, not so in population, but geographic size. Every other major city in Canada's geographical boundaries could fit inside Ottawa, like it's enormous. When you look at that, our police, fire, and EMS are capable of handling all normative, expected events that occur in the city of Ottawa, right? There's enough ambulances. Well, ambulance bed. There's enough firefighters. There's enough police officers. Now, we've gone to level 0 with no ambulances available over 300 times a year, where you call 911 and there's simply no ambulance available for you. And that is a bit scary and a bit terrifying, but that's more of a disruptive problem we have between the handoff of patients from a ambulance to a hospital. You drive by a hospital here in Ottawa and you can often see 7 ambulances sitting outside of it. They're just sitting there because they haven't been able to hand over their patients to the hospital staff in the emergency room, so that ambulance is grounded and stuck there. So that's not a problem of the frequency and number of ambulances. That's a process that is hilarious only from the perspective that we've had it for so long. I don't know why they just don't lock 2 people in a room and don't let them emerge until they have a solution. Maybe it's a bit archaic to think that way, but I think it's ridiculous that we still face this type of problem. That being said, under normal circumstances, that's how your population functions. They figured out roughly what is the right number of on-duty capability. Now, most incident response mechanisms within urban centers have a surge plan. So a minor surge of people for a singular significant event. I'll give you an example. In September of 2018, we had 6 tornadoes go through the greater NCR, National Capital Region area, including Gatineau, Quebec, across the river. And that called for a surge, right? That called for extra resources to be brought to bear. They were brought to bear. And then the incident was over, and then it was dealt with within a shift, and everybody was back to normal, right? So most incident response mechanisms have the ability to deal with surge capability, right? What they're not capable of doing, and what we cannot afford to build in any circumstances, is a significant disruption of extended period. For example, think of those that were around long enough for the ice storm, right? Think around for those that were around for the brownout that happened in 2003. Significant longer duration events that cause disruptions to a large focus of population will exceed the capacity of local incident response. It just happens. So most municipalities have agreements with shouldering municipalities to borrow resources, et cetera, back and forth. And then there's always the option to go to higher levels of government to ask for additional resources. But when you, at the community level, we look at community resilience to be able to deal with the events where for a short period of time, and we estimate it's probably up to 72 hours. And if you're wondering about this and you're looking for some other podcast ideas on it, there is like a 10-year-old podcast still out there from Joanna Wagstaff, a CBC meteorologist and seismologist, called Faults, that walks through what a Cascadia event will happen like in the Southwest BC and in Northwest United States of America. And she talks about, through a several episode series, of what it's really going to be like from an incident response perspective. And so think about a major event that would happen in your area. And depending on the risk profile of where you live, it could be any number of things, or it could be an industrial accident. Think about the first 72 to 96 hours where no matter what your need is, 911 and the incident response is not available. That's community resilience, right? Where no matter what you're having, people are having heart attacks, people are stuck under rubble. Like, it doesn't matter. There's nobody from incident response able to assist you, right? Because bringing in resources from higher levels of government and shouldering municipalities takes a significant period of time. That's community resilience. How well is your community as you understand it right now? In your mind, when you think about it, how well do you believe your community in which you belong and are an active member is ready to step up and navigate that, right? That is an honest, reflective question. Now, we have a number of programs that are available. One in the United States of America, and its sister popular down in Australia and New Zealand, is called CERT. It's Community Emergency Response Training. And this is training that's provided to community members, and it basically allows them to be in a leadership position and to help their fellow residents. So it's teach people how to work in rubble, teach people how to determine whether a house is safe to occupy, provides first aid, how to build improvised shelter. It's a whole bunch of really useful information that builds the skills and capacities of people within the community. For example, if you had a number of significantly injured individuals in your community and there was no 911 or EMS service available to assist, would you have both the necessary supplies and the necessary skill sets embedded within your community to be able to at least sustain life to the best extent possible, right? And then there's another model, and this is a really interesting model. It's a cultural model out of Germany called THW. I'm not going to try to butcher the German name, but it's basically a national disaster response system, training system, to where training and equipment is provided by the government to groups, and there's hundreds of groups across Germany. So basically within a community similar to CERT, there's some very well-trained individuals and properly equipped to deal with the local tasks, deal with the local issues that are ongoing. And that is a significant uptake in ability, and that contributes greatly to community resilience. Now, I have the opportunity coming up, for those of you that are nerds, on the 25th and 26th of this month. I am at the Canadian Emergency Preparedness and Climate Adaptation Conference here in Ottawa. I'm on the governing body. I've got 3 opportunities to speak. One, I am at a fireside chat with the head of Calgary Emergency Management Agency, talking about that's about fit for about 15 minutes. And I'm the host of that, just giving her an opportunity. Sue Henry, she's an incredible human being. I've met her once before at the Disaster Forum in Banff and listened to her speak. Just talk about the challenges that Calgary has had and what they're looking forward to and how they're building community resilience. Greatly looking forward to that chat. As well, I'm, along with Scott Cameron from Emergency Management Logistics Canada, I'm presenting on the value of social capital in building community resilience and how we use it to make and really grow strong, productive, resilient, and prepared communities. So the value of social capital is unending. It's the main frame of my theoretical framework. Remember how I talked earlier about people use theoretical frameworks? Some people are feminists, some people are climate scientists, whatever it may be, how you look through the lens. I am a researcher in social capital. So when I look at situations that are occurring and events that occur, I'll look for indicators of social capital. I'll look for how social capital may have influenced outcomes of that. That's just my theoretical frame. So I'm presenting that with Scott Cameron. Very much looking forward to bringing the linkage between the Sendai framework of disaster risk reduction and social capital here to Canadians. The third one, which is the really great opportunity that came up, is I'm on a panel discussing the question of whether Canada needs a national disaster response agency. And on that is Eva, and she is the leading advocate for the THW process here in Canada, a brilliant individual, as well as Brock Long, the former head of FEMA, is on the panel, and Tim Riker, the contrarian emergency manager. And the four of us are talking about that, moderated by Jim Montgomery, the founder and head of Canadian Disaster Response Organization. And what we're trying to do is look at if Canada needs a national disaster response, civilian response agency, so not the military and not a public sector owned one, but a civilian one. What does it need to look like? What does it need to be able to do? How should it be structured? How should it be resourced? And where should it be placed? And those are very informative discussions that need to happen. And I think Canada's at a brilliant opportunity right now to do something different. I'm very afraid that they'll make it a government organization. And I think that's a recipe for disaster, putting it under a level of government. I just don't think the government needs to be involved in this discussion whatsoever. And that's contrary to what other people believe, which is great and why the panel is going to be very exciting. But if you're in Ottawa, it's not cheap to go to the conference, but it's worth every dollar because we have over 2,000 delegates coming in. It's historically going to be Canada's largest gathering of people within what I talked about, the paradigm, the discipline, and the community of practice of emergency management, looking at some pretty critical questions we have to ask about the future of Canadian resilience, really, at a national level, and then bringing that down to individual neighborhoods. So great opportunities there if you have a chance to do it. The reason I bring that up is that really what we're all trying to do is build resilience, because what resilience means is an organization of individuals are more capable of handling a situation through their own resources. The reason that matters is because as disasters become more expensive, and if you look at the expense and the cost of disasters, it's going exponentially large. And that is simply because we continue to build expensive things in precarious locations. And it's far more costly to continue to rebuild something that was built today than something that was built 40 years ago, right? The replacement costs for square footage is through the roof. And so as we do that, implementing a national resilience program goes nowhere. It's a great buzzword and it means nothing. Resilience is always going to be a local question because the hazard profile, threats, and the dynamics of community are going to be so different across this country that it's not pointless. But it's a great theoretical idea, but practically there's really nothing, even at the subnational government, that can be done to build resilience. Short of targeted programmatic initiatives, and I'm going to speak about those on some later podcasts, but the idea being is that you, as an individual, first adopting a prepared life, making the choice to be personally responsible for your outcomes, and deciding that you want to invest the time and effort, not money. We don't talk about spending money here at this podcast, but time and effort to become prepared as a family unit, and then use that to be the champion in your community and build community resilience, which exponentially helps yourself as well. That is where society will move past all of these structural obstacles and problems that we have that keep people, people who choose apathy because, things are just so bad. That's such a bad event. I can't prepare for it. I'm just going to stick my head in the ostrich in the sand, or just ignore it and carry on. Or avoidance behavior, which means I understand it. I absolutely know if this happens, it's going to kick my butt, but I'm just not going to think about it, right? I'm just going to intentionally ignore it. So apathy and avoidance are two things that happen a lot when we talk about preparedness and resilience, because the way the communications program is currently phrased is it tells people to do a lot of things that have nothing to do with resilience and everything to do with being professional victims. Now, I've spoken in the past about the current, what I refer to as public sector resident-facing preparedness communications are junk, and all they're doing is trying to persuade people to be professional victims, right? Have a kid, be informed, have a plan, sit in your home. Don't worry, the big bad day will be over soon and the super magical government forces will come rescue you. That does nothing to help anybody, right? And I'll give you a prime example. And I had this discussion on the golf course with a buddy of mine yesterday. I'm saying, the first two things they tell people to do is have non-perishable food and potable water, right? Pretty logical, no problem with that. However, as an academic, I look at the totality of disasters that have happened in the 21st century in Canada, and I look at the number of humans who have died or seriously injured due to lack of access to food or potable water, and the number is pretty much zero. So if nobody had a problem with accessing food and water, why is food and water the first two things we're telling people to do, right? That is the disconnect between the academic research, which is telling us what actually needs to be done in generalist, vague terms, as science does, to assist individuals to navigate disruptions, but yet we build ideas and preparedness communications off, remember my reference, opinions and beliefs. So we have a whole bunch of people out there who have opinions and beliefs in preparedness, and they use those to build preparedness communications when it's not grounded in evidence. And as a scientist, I could care less what their opinions and belief are. Show me the evidence that led to your opinion, and we can have a different story. But that is enough on community resilience today. I hope you understand the idea that building community resilience happens because of you. It happens through you, and it will benefit you and the community in which you belong. Again, whether that's a faith community, a geographically limited community, a cultural community, building those strong social capital, building those relationships, building the skill sets necessary, and working with your local level of government to build a strong, robust relationship. That's a recipe for success. So drop over to our website, www.insidemycanoehead.ca. Have a look to see what we have available over there. Our parent company is at preparednesslabs.ca. We thank you very much for joining us. Sign up for everything over at preparednesslabs.ca that you wish. We've got a great newsletter, goes out every Thursday. We've got some free downloads. They don't require your email, so if you just want to download and go, I'll never know you're there. It's just... Our mission here is really simple. It is about providing free preparedness information, helping you adopt a prepared life and rock an incredible life in the middle of the most disruptive decades since the 1940s. Take care and stay safe.